A few years ago, I was ministering to a young family, a young couple with small children. And they struggled in their marriage, and the biggest reason for that struggle was the husband abused alcohol. He was an alcoholic. And at one point, he kind of hit rock bottom, had to go off for treatment, joined Alcoholics Anonymous, and for at least a few months anyway, he was sober. He was sober. And I remember the lady telling me, my husband's been sober for 2 months. And I said, well, what's that been like? What's that been like? And she said, it's like winning the lottery. It's like winning the lottery. I've never won the lottery. Imagine most of you haven't either. But I imagine it's probably a glorious kind of thing. My life has changed, and things will never be the same, and wow, we're on easy street. But as the months continued to go by, and he was still struggling with sobriety, she realized she had some work to do. She struggled with forgiveness, forgiving him. He had done some bad things while he was drunk. He didn't remember them, but he did them, and she was mad about it. She was still hurt. She struggled with forgiveness. So she had some work to do too. She had work to do too. So I can go back to this lottery image. Like I said, none of us have probably won the lotto, but some people do. They had the Powerball lottery in the Midwest, and the odds of winning that is 300 million to 1. But when someone does win, and they do, they give them this nice little list of things to do or not to do, the lottery officials. They give them a bunch of nice list of what to do and what not to do now. One of the things they do is they ask them, you better hire 3 people, an accountant, a lawyer, and a bodyguard. Then they tell them things they should also not stop doing. Don't stop working. And keep your mouth shut. Don't tell the whole world. And don't blow it on foolish things. Don't be investing in car washes or hotels. Now, I know what most of you are probably thinking. I'm tempted to think that too. If I won the lotto, I know how to handle that money. Well, you might. But I also found this, that 70% of lotto winners lose all their money in 5 years. 70%. And they're actually worse off than they were before they won it. What happened? Well, they won the lotto and then they lost it. They were careless. They were reckless. And someone who's struggling with alcohol, they're always on the edge. It takes work. It takes work, and the process of healing has to begin. Or even though she might be experiencing the lotto, she could lose that real quick. He could fall back into his alcohol, and it may be even worse. Now, as Christians, we think and speak of winning the lotto as ultimate, that we have things better than winning the lottery, salvation, eternal life, that we get through baptism and confession. But hopefully, when we are forgiven and we receive forgiveness, even if you win the actual lottery, hopefully it's a chance for growth, generosity, mission, discipleship, holiness. Hopefully if God has gifted you with something, it makes you more generous, makes you more responsible. That there's also a change of heart. Wow, I have been given a great gift. Now, hopefully there's change in me and change in us. Because like with the lotto and salvation, you abuse it, you could lose it. That's what happened to this servant today. This servant owed his king more money than he could possibly pay back. It says that. He could never pay it back. He was hopelessly in debt. Now, it's easy to feel sorry for someone like that, and we should. But I think we know people who find themselves in debt all the time because they're absolutely irresponsible with money. They get themselves in debt, they get themselves deeper in debt, and they want people to bail them out. That may have been him, I don't know. But my guess is he still struggled with greed and selfishness. And he went to the king and said, I need some time, knowing full well he could never pay it back. But as we hear, the king was full of compassion and pity and canceled his debt. He won the lotto. He gained salvation. The whole story is about salvation. He has now been bailed out. But does he change his heart? Does it make him more generous, more compassionate, more responsible? Well, if you follow the story, you see that that's not the case. Another servant came to him who owed him much less and asked for time. And now we given a really ugly list of what he did to him. When he asked for some time to pay it back, he seized him, choked him, demanded of him the money, refused him, and then jailed him. And when the king found out, he reinstated the debt, which is a total fly in the face to once saved, always saved. No, you can be not saved, get your salvation, and you can lose it, as we see today. Having said that, when we speak of forgiveness and healing, it's easy to talk about money. The Lord uses money as an image, building up treasure in heaven. He uses that a lot. You know, he gives you a talent. Do you invest it? Do you use it? But when it comes to forgiveness of wounds that have happened to us, or if we've hurt other people, sometimes that's easier said than done. If you have a father wound, or a mother wound, or a self wound, and someone said, well, you need to forgive and move on, easier said than done, isn't it? I will often hear, when I give someone absolution, I don't feel forgiven. Or I don't feel like I've forgiven so-and-so, whether it's a family member or not. And in those situations, we have to remember there's a difference between forgiveness and healing. Those are two different things. They're two different things. Because forgiveness is the beginning of healing. It is not healing. Healing takes time. So the easiest kind of, I guess, illustration I can do for that is if, Deacon gets frustrated with me and punches me in the nose. It happens. I have that effect on people, okay? I'm kidding. But he punches me in the nose and he says, oh, Father, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Sure. Happens all the time. But now we're reconciled, right? We're reconciled. But I still got a bloody nose. I got a swollen nose. And I can take aspirin, put some ice on it, but that takes time. That takes time. I think even a better illustration, if this ever happened to you, is when you're hammering something and you hit your thumb with a hammer. If you ever done that, that hurts. And your thumb gets all black and blue and swollen. Now, again, you could take some aspirin or put some ice on it. But what heals a busted thumb? Well, just time. But if you keep hitting the thumb, which is what happens, if you keep hitting it, it stays sore. It stays sore. And if someone has hurt you, or you have hurt someone, and you have a wound, it starts with forgiveness, but then you have to do the work of healing. And you can't be going back to it, always poking at it all the time, because then it won't heal. It won't heal. That's the difference between forgiveness and healing. Forgiveness is part of it, but when you forgive someone, are forgiven, and there's healing involved, that's winning the lotto. You will find freedom and salvation. The whole world looks different. Now, we hear this little list today from the first reading. Billy, if you can put that last slide for the first reading. It also gives us a nice list that I would argue is easier said than done. What does it say? Remember your last days, set enmity aside. That's division. Set it aside. Remember death and decay, and cease from sin. Think of the commandments. Hate not your neighbor. Remember the Most High covenant. And here's the big one. And overlook faults. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. And someone might be saying, Father, you don't know my situation. I don't. But I do know that forgiveness is a choice and healing is a process. You could take that down. So what we're going to do today, we're going to do a little exercise, and we'd invite you to participate. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my microphone. Many of you are old enough to remember the days when we had altar rails. Remember those? Altar rails. An altar rail was an extension of the altar. That's what it was. This whole area was considered sacred space. And when someone would bring up your gifts, whether it was the bread and wine, which is the most important, but people would also bring up their first fruits. They'd bring up money. They'd bring up tools. These are things they'd offer in sacrifice, and we would offer them to God. But they would also sometimes take little sheets of paper, and they would stick them in that thurible. That's what that comes from. They would stick them in the thurible, prayers for people or for themselves, and they'd light it, and the smoke would go up to God. That's what that was supposed to stand for. We send these prayers up to God. Now, we're not going to do that because that could start a fire, so that's not happening. But I would invite you to do today, and we're going to take a few minutes to do this. In front of you in your little slot there's these little sheets of paper. And when I ask you to pray about this for just a second, on your little sheet of paper, it says, Jesus, and there's some pencils in there, Jesus helped me to heal my relationship with. What I'd ask you to do is there someone in your life that your relationship could be better? Could be a distant relative, could be his coworker, could be the person sitting next to you. I don't know. So I'm going to try to model this for you. I have a good friend, my best friend in seminary. He actually left the seminary, and that caused a rift between him and I. And so every once in a while we do communicate, but my relationship is not good. So there's some healing have to be involved. So I'm going to write his name right here. We're going to fold it up. What I'm going to do is put it in here. So what I ask you to do is write someone's name, kind of pass it down to the middle, and the ushers will pick it up. And we're going to take a minute to do that. Take about 1 minute. Just write someone's name, fold it up, and pass it towards the end, and we'll pick them up, and we'll take a minute to do that.